Well, one of the things that I believe personally with Sasquatch is that they spend a lot of their time monitoring the environment. I think for a lot of time, a lot of years, me just reading sightings reports and just kind of casually being into the world of Sasquatch, you kind of in your mind almost have like an impression of these creatures as these big lumbering beasts just kind of always on the hunt, sniffing around for, deer and berries and whatever. And I think that they're a lot more particular than that, and I think they're a lot more organized in how they monitor things. They are aware of all the seasonal food sources that change, constantly changing, new ones coming up, other ones disappearing, and just the constant ebb and flow of the woods. They're very aware of that. But part of why I think that all this fits together is I think in order for them to even get at the sources of protein like deer and other game, fish, salmon runs, things like that, I think that they have to have a really good idea that they're going to be able to follow bands of forage in order to get to the bigger food source, the protein source. In other words, they've really got to know what they can eat on the way to get there. Just like if you were going to take a trip to a city halfway across the country, you would have to eat along the way to get there. And these things are so big, they don't have a really big margin of error. And so I think all of that gets disrupted. It gets disrupted when you have clear cutting or other development, and it clearly gets disrupted when you have these massive wildfires, because if these creatures have been going around for years monitoring what's growing where and how much, and they would have a pretty good idea of, okay, well, if it's not raining this much, there's going to be a little bit less of this, and all that sort of stuff, just like humans that live that lifestyle do as well. But I kind of think of it reminds me of when I was a kid. My uncle, he would always, in the small town that he lived in, he had planted trees and trees all over town. And I remember driving in like his old early '60s car, and he would just drive around watching the trees, making sure they were okay, And so I'm gonna just for fun, I'm gonna call it the Elichuk Principle. I really think that is a defining thing about Sasquatch behavior. I don't think that they're just kind of haphazardly, randomly going around. I really do think that they monitor how many deer are in each valley and what's going on, just like farmers or any kind of agriculturalist is going to do. And certainly, it's very similar, obviously, in ways to how the indigenous people here monitored their food sources. And they went a step further than we know. We don't know that Sasquatch doesn't do some sort of forest management. Maybe in ways it does, but obviously, indigenous people here played, as far as we can tell, a much more active role in shaping the forest than Sasquatch do. But as far as wildfires specifically, kind of beyond all that, like the disruption, the displacement, the potential separation of groups, all those sorts of things, we got to talk about, okay, just physiologically, what does a wildfire do to a Sasquatch that's near it? I mean, obviously, the first thing you could think of, well, what if they get burned, or just that level of heat, what is that doing to something that big? And then, of course, something that has lungs that big, inhaling that many toxins. Now, humans, we have devised industry that can provide us with all sorts of masks and indoor settings and air purifiers and HVAC systems that can suck it all out, and they don't have that. And they can't, they're not going to be able to move way to another region real quickly by driving their car, obviously, or whatever. And so they're kind of stuck. Now, to be sure, I'm sure that they, will go find isolated little areas that for whatever reason the wildfire smoke isn't making its way in there, some valleys or rocky crags somewhere. Of course, I think they're probably doing that, but, we don't know. This has got to have just really bad effects on them. like I say, with their giant lungs, and then of course we all know that they have really sensitive eyes for night vision. They have incredible vision. Well, when you're generating that much particulate matter, and these creatures are, right there on the perimeter, at least in that little region. Yeah, what is that going to do to their ability to hunt at night and just their physical fitness in general? And then I think, go beyond that. Well, if we now have just a regular wildfire season in the Pacific Northwest, how much of that, can they develop cancer? Different emphysema. I don't know. All sorts of different diseases. What could be happening to them because of that? And I obviously we don't have a clue.